Hey all, Grolo here. Hope 2025 is off to a fantastic start for you all. I wanted to chat about 2025, specifically Star Citizen in 2025. Let's kick this year off by making some predictions. That's what we do at the start of a new year, right? I figured this would be a great opportunity for me to be publicly wrong in front of everyone. Now, to make good predictions for 2025, we're going to need to look beyond it to what's going on in 2026. Because 2026 is going to be the big make or break year for Star Citizen, in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people would have us believe that this year is the make or break year, or in fact, every year is the make or break year, but nah. 2026, that'll be the year. Or more specifically, whichever year they ship Squadron 42 will be the make or break year. Now, what does shipping Squadron 42 have to do with Star Citizen predictions, you may ask? Everything. I mentioned this before, but there's no way in hell that CIG is going to miss the once and forever opportunity of leveraging the Squadron 42 launch to increase interest, adoption, hype, and all the things for Star Citizen. But this is going to be a lot more difficult than it sounds. Why is that? Well, because the kind of people that will buy a finished, polished, ready-to-play Squadron 42 are not the kind of people that are going to be interested in Star Citizen as it exists today. And this is exactly why, in my opinion, we're hearing the messaging from CIG now that 2025 will be all about playability. It fits. It's also why I believe it. Go to any Reddit thread or Spectrum post and you'll find people calling CIG incapable, they're buffoons, they're idiots, but that always seems a little odd to me. Like, how do they know? I don't think any of us know what they're capable of, because playability and polish has never been a focus, except for the single player game, which we don't have eyes on. And the fact that it's not been a focus makes sense. Why? Well, remember what I said in past videos, that everything's a trade-off. There's no perfect way of doing any of this. It's perfection's an illusion. Focusing on polish or playability comes at a cost too. What's the cost? New features, new systems, big changes. Things will get a lot more incremental with a focus on like polish, playability. Now, I'm not saying we won't get any new features, and it's quite possible that CIG will try to compensate for this with more people power. They could go all hands on deck with playability and still maintain a trickle of new features by bringing in more people from other projects, or Squadron 42 or whatever else they got going on at that studio. We know the capacity at CIG continues to increase. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But in the end, the focus on playability is certainly not free. The tax will be paid somewhere, be it fewer features or more people or salary, whatever the case may be. So with that, let's do what I do when I start or join any project. Let's look at the goal state and work backwards from there in order to establish our predictions. What needs to change with Star Citizen to maximize the gains within the verse at the time that Squadron 42 ships? And what do I mean by maximizing the gains? I mean, when someone picks up Squadron 42 and as a result of enjoying that game, they decide to join the Star Citizen, the MMO. Retaining as many of those people as possible, because there's a very real risk here of souring people to the MMO. I'm not a doomer, but it's possible, and it's possible to recover from such a souring. But if you can avoid that reaction in as many people as possible in the first place, I mean, that'll certainly be better, right? imagine this journey. Like a person buys and plays Squadron 42. Let's assume it's the first time. Like they've never heard of a CIG product before. So okay, they're playing Squadron 42. They like it enough. They decide to check out the MMO. Maybe they're an FPS player, and Squadron 42 impresses them, and they're like, "Yeah, I'd check out an MMO if it was like this, right? Like if it was like an FPS game." Or who knows what their situation is. But regardless, now they're downloading the MMO. Now remember, they're coming from a polished, ready to go Squadron 42. And they're logging into Star Citizen for the first time. Obviously, like if they get stuck in their bed or they walk out of their hab and fall through the world, or they make it to the elevator and the elevator ejects them into space, or maybe they make it to the tram and the tram goes off the rails and floats into the middle of the planet. Or they finally get to the ASOP terminal and it for whatever reason it won't summon a ship. Like these are the things that will just have them log off and forget about it. Like, you know what? Like, yeah, this isn't the experience I'm looking for. This is nothing like Squadron 42. And they'll forget about it for a while. They certainly won't contribute to perpetuating the surge, right? The hype, or like drawing their friends into it. Those are the things that CIG wants. So we want to minimize the number of people that are getting the really shitty experience. But beyond just minimizing the bad, you're going to need some gameplay too. More than we have now. We have a lot of loops right now, but very little game. If you look at something like Ashes of Creation, also in early alpha, which is kind of why, I mean, I draw the comparison between these two games a lot on this channel, but there's reasons for that. But Ashes, it's got game. Like, it's got loops, but they're connected loops. There's reasons to go do things in Ashes. That's what we need in the Star Citizen MMO before Squadron 42 lands. We don't need it finished. And I'm not ripping on CIG for being further behind on the gameplay bit. The systems and loops they do have are way higher fidelity than what you see on Ashes. They're more interactive, etc. Just as an example, in Ashes, hunting currently involves finding a stationary animal in the world and right-clicking on it and waiting for 20 seconds. Right? That's what I mean by higher fidelity. Like, contrast that to mining in Star Citizen, which is we may think of that as like a game loop that needs a lot more work still, but like it's pretty good when you compare it to some of the other games out there. But as bad as that hunting loop is in Ashes, there's a reason to go do it. You can get mounts, you can craft, you can train animals, you can train animals to carry your caravans. I mean, there's reasons to do it. There's no reason to go mining in Star Citizen right now, except to earn credits so you can buy another ship. So that you can do something else there's no reason to do. That's the gap we need to close. So what will we need? Here's my list. Let me know in the comments if yours is different, by the way. But crafting, base building, improved player trading, org improvements, slight improvements to the flight model. We're going to talk about each of these a little bit more later, but working missions, working transit system, working collision system. So like all the things that plague us day to day, they need to be working. Improved NPC behavior. Nobody wants to run into a bunker or some mission and the NPC just stand there ignoring them like until they get shot in the back. Sustained performance, like something needs to be done to protect us from server degradation impacting gameplay quite as much as it is right now. And then minimal wiping. I have that on here. I'm color coding these, like the orangish, reddish. That kind of signals like the really important must-haves for me. So I'm listing like 5 of those here, and the yellow is representing like, I think CIG should aim to have these to help with retention, and then I also have some green ones here at the bottom, which are like nice to haves. Like if there was bandwidth, these would be on my list, but I certainly don't think it'll be extremely impactful. But an improved experience for joining friends and an improved log-in, log-out experience. I think we've been playing Star Citizen so long, and I've gotten so used to like logging out and then logging back in. Oh, you're back in the hab. I think that's going to be like unsettling to most players. That's very unlike any other game, at least MMO wise, that I've ever played. People expect to kind of like log out and then log back into where they were. And I know CIG has mentioned that's the goal or something close to that. And so I think over the next 2 years, that would be a really good thing to get in if possible. Again, I don't think this is like game ending if it's not in there, but if they do that, then that also paves the way for an improved experience in joining friends. I'm sure you've all dealt with like logging out to menu, joining leader, all that kind of stuff to get kind of grouped with your friends. It's very reminiscent of a lobby game just because of the player cap on shards right now. I don't know what the player cap's going to look like in 2 years whenever Squadron 42 lands. But if it's not 2,000 plus, even if it is, like if we have a lot of shards in the region, then we're going to need some way of getting friends together. And if we have the ability to like log in or log out and log back in where you were, then that's going to open up something like, if a friend invites you to a party, bring up a prompt that says, hey, do you want to transfer to that friend's shard? And like a seamless transition. So like if you click yes, you get like the loading screen and then you're right back into the shard where you were standing. I think I just noticed this for the first time a couple days ago when I was in a Luminous operation. Some in our party kind of logged out and logged into a different server, and a prompt popped up on my screen saying the party was initiating a load. Do I want to join them? I've never clicked yes because I was in the middle of something, so I didn't then. And that was the first time I noticed that. I guess maybe that's a 4.0 thing, but so I don't know what happens if I click yes. I'm assuming maybe I would get a loading screen and then it would kick me back to the hab. That's what I did not want to have happen. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of my list. Now, before we dig into this list, let's give some attention to what I left off the list intentionally. Dynamic server meshing is not on my list directly, but sustained performance of the shards is. Now, they could go a long way with static meshing, or they could decide the dynamic server meshing lift is low enough effort to achieve it that way. Either way, it doesn't matter for Squadron 42's release. What matters is that the performance of these servers is relatively stable, whatever that takes. If that means, they expand the existing static, fine. If that means we got to get dynamic in, fine. From what I've understood, like the lift from static to dynamic is actually relatively low, but that's, famous last words. That could change. But all the players coming in from a finished Squadron 42 project, they're not going to care if we have dynamic meshing in or not. Like, that's going to be irrelevant to them, other than the byproduct of the servers performing better. New ships are not on my list. That doesn't mean we shouldn't or won't get them. The funding must continue, but we've got plenty enough ships for a successful soft launch. I'm going to call it that. I'm going to call whenever Squadron 42 ships, I'm going to call that the soft launch of Star Citizen, the MMO, because I think that's pretty close to reality. Engineering is not on my list. I want it. I want a lot of other stuff too. I want cooking. I want shaving. I want games of billiards on the ship. I want to be able to play the arcade games on my ship. I want to be able to watch TV, listen to music. In general, I just want lots of things to do on my ship. But none of it's really required as far as I'm concerned. Now, if we can get engineering and physicalized damage in addition to all the other things on the list, now we're talking. But regardless, engineering tier 0 is on the verge of landing anyway. It was supposed to be part of 4.0. They said it's going to land shortly after, so my opinion on this doesn't really matter too much anyway. A final flight model is not on my list. And that's not to say it's not important. But Star Citizen will end up drawing in a lot of people without a ton of flight experience. I dare say only a fraction of Star Citizen's players will really get into flying at a competitive level or really take interest in the physics of it at all. So while it's absolutely important for 1.0, I don't think it's critical for retaining players from the Squadron 42 surge. I mean, it can't be garbage either. I think what is critical is that flying is simpler than it is now. It's clunky as hell right now. Like ditching the individual modes will be a huge win. I think a brand new player will find that extremely confusing. Even I still find it confusing and unintuitive, and I've been playing for a while. So, yeah, we got to get rid of the modes. I totally agree with that. So given my list above, let's try to predict when these things may land. Obviously, the things I've excluded will all come between. Yeah, assuming CIG agrees with me, of course. But I'm saying, the things I've excluded, they'll definitely come between the Squadron 42 launch and the Star Citizen 1.0 release. But as for how things will land between now and the Squadron 42 release, let's scatter this list across two columns, 2025 and 2026. Let's assume Squadron 42 comes at the end of 2026. I'm sure that's a safe bet. When Chris Roberts was on stage and said, we should be able to deliver this by 2026, I'm sure that doesn't mean the start. I'm sure it's going to be coming in just under the wire, just like always, probably around IAA or something like that. So that'll give them 2 full years to get these features in. So here's what I got. Shrink that just a little bit. There we go. So in that 2025 column, I put HAB building. I think that this year they're going to make a lot of progress on base building. Obviously, they've kind of hinted at that in the last CitizenCon. I don't know that we're going to get any kind of real base building, but if you remember, they kind of teased those player homes, like HABs. They kind of looked like RVs almost, like just those small little living quarters that you could drop on a planet. I expect that we're going to get that this year. Now that may sound like a letdown, but there's a lot to that. Like in order to get those, we're going to need the user interface replacing them. They're going to need the tech in the game for actually taking a structure and placing it on a planetary surface and having that planetary surface adapt to the structure sitting on it. I don't know if you remember, but in some of those Inside Star Citizens or whatever, Star Citizen Lives or whatever, they were talking about that. The audience had asked the question of what that's going to look like, and they said it's work in progress. They had some plans, but that's significant effort in and of itself. So they're going to have that working. They're going to have the placement UI working. They're going to have the ability for players to transport, carry these things somehow, deploy them to where. So there's significant work just in getting us the ability to deploy these HABs, and the HABs themselves will be cool, right? We'll be able to set those up somewhere on a planet. We'll be able to decorate them. We'll be able to kind of see PES working and the persistence, so that we can come back to our home and our stuff's there. It'll be kind of cool, like landing our ships by our hab and going in, and maybe even some of the armor stands and stuff will be working by then, because that was definitely a prominent feature of the habs whenever they showed them in those teasers. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the armor stands, the habs, that kind of stuff. I don't think we'll actually see base building until 2026, which is why I put that in the 2026 column. I think going into 2026, they'll kind of expand on the hab and give us the ability to start crafting base components and using the UI that they delivered in 2025 to place those, and so on and so forth. And I'm suspecting by the end of 2026, we will have at least small base building, maybe medium base building. That's my estimate. Again, I could be wrong. We're going to come back and check on my guesses to see how right I am at the end of this year. Missions and transit and collisions and etc. Obviously, letter from the chairman this year came out and said they're going to be focusing on playability. I think these things are going to be at the top of the list. Like, these are the things that are ruining our day in the game on a regular basis. So obviously they're going to be high on the list. And I think we're going to see, if I had to guess, my guess will be that we'll see drastic improvements to those things in 2025. NPC behavior, I think we'll continue to see improvements on that. So that missions involving NPC combat will be a better experience. I think that'll probably improve even more in 2026 because I have server stability on the list in 2026. I think we'll start to see some of that this year, but I think by the end of 2026, when Squadron 42 is scheduled to ship, I think server stability is going to be like under the spotlight and kind of stopping the rapid server regressions that we're seeing now. Org improvements I also put on the 2025 list. They demoed a lot of that at CitizenCon last year. When people start flooding in from Squadron 42, they're going to have org features in the game. Being able to group and congregate and work with your org mates and all that, that'll be critical to retaining people. If people come into the game and there's no guild or org facilities at all, I think that's going to be that would be a huge miss. So I think we'll start to see some of that stuff they showed off in CIG. I think we'll start to see some of that this year. It might take them into next year to deliver all of it, but yeah, that's a definite thing I think we'll see. And then I also have the green, I color coded this a little bit too. The green is stuff I'm fairly confident on. The yellow is stuff, The yellow is stuff I'm not confident at all on, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw. So in the also list, this is stuff I don't think is critical to, the soft launch and retaining players, like engineering fires, but we know that's coming right around the corner. So we'll see that in 2025. New missions. I don't know why I put that in yellow. That should be green. Confident in that as well, because that's associated with engineering. I know the engineering gameplay has new missions coming out associated with it, so we'll see that. And then the thing I put a question mark by, and then yellow, Maelstrom. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Maelstrom functionality coming out in 2025. Is it necessary for the soft launch? No, I don't think so. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of it. And then 2026, I already mentioned a lot of this. Crafting is the big thing I think we'll see in 2026, at least the beginnings of it. I don't know if we'll be able to craft everything, but I think we'll see some early crafting coming online, so that at least we can craft base building components, maybe some FPS gear, furniture. I don't know that we'll see ship crafting at that point. I highly doubt it, but I think we'll start to see some of the other stuff, at least bases. And I think crafting is critical for the soft launch and connecting all those game loops. Going back to what I said about Ashes versus Star Citizen, getting those game loops in order and connected is paramount. And crafting and base building together is the backbone that will connect those things. Improve player trading, I put that in 2026 because I think base building is going to be a huge part of that. I'm hoping and I'm fairly confident that we'll see the kiosks that I talked about, the ability to kind of put those down, connect those to our base, cargo lifts, so that we could sell stuff. Whether they go beyond that, I'm not sure, but I think that'll go a long way to improving player trading. I think the stretch goal there would be some kind of method of connecting all the base kiosks into some kind of a market. Now I know they want us traveling to find things, so I don't know what their plans on market is, like what the distance would be. I'm hoping personally that it's some kind of like thing where, like, based on my position in space, if I have like a market terminal or something on my ship, like I can connect to like nearby information. Something like that would be cool. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, I would love to see the marketing and trading tied into the other gameplay loops like that somehow. And of course, if they do come up with the improved login, logout, which would pave the way to an improved friend experience, I think that would be in 2026. I put that in green. I don't know if that should be the case. That maybe should be yellow. I'm not sure. I'm as confident we'll see that. New missions. I mean, we're getting new missions every year. I'm pretty confident in that one. And I have quite a few yellow in 2026 I'm not so confident on, but I would not be surprised if we see reputation improvements. I think that's going to be a big part of what like the character progression and feedback that will kind of give these incoming players like something to work towards and do. So I don't think it'll be finished by a long shot, but maybe improvements in that system. Law and security. This is something we haven't heard a whole lot about, but I know, with the launch of Pyro, griefing was front and center again, the call for PvE, all that kind of stuff. I think before we get a massive surge of players, I think CIG might be thinking about how to bring some of that law and security stuff into play. So I don't know what that might look like, but I would not be surprised if we saw something along those lines. And then finally, Nyx. Long shot. Could we see Nyx in 2026? I think it's possible. I don't know that I'd say probable, but maybe. So now in my day job, we would break that list that I came up with, a 2025, 2026 list. We'd break that down into quarters, like, not too dissimilar from CIG's roadmap, but we'd break that down into quarters. We'd create project plans, in a lot more detail than what CIG provides on their release view or their roadmap. But screw that. I hate that about my job. We're not going to do that. We're just going to leave it here at the 2025 2026 list, that's my predictions for 2025. So quick recap: hab building, NPC transit missions, collision improvements, aka playability, improved flight model but not final, engineering, fires, all that. New missions to go along with all that, org improvements, and maybe the beginnings of Maelstrom. That's a question mark. That's my predictions for 2025. Let's reconvene. I want to return to this list at the end of the year and see what we were right about. But not just my thoughts and predictions, yours too. So jump into the comments and give us your own predictions. Tell us what you think I got right, what I got wrong, and what I'm missing completely. We'll review it all, my thoughts, yours, at the end of 2025. We'll come back, and it'll be really cool. I look forward to that video. And last, but certainly not least, if you're looking for some great folks to fly with, head over to unhinged.gg or luminous.gg. Luminous is the name of our Star Citizen org. We consider it a sovereign corporation within the verse and within Unhinged Gaming. Over at Unhinged, that's the broader community. They play all sorts of games. Luminous sits within that umbrella and focuses on just Star Citizen. You can see us playing here. We're always looking for great people. Your skill level is less relevant. We can help with that. Each of those sites that I mentioned, unhinged.gg, luminous.gg, they both have links to Discord. Follow those links, jump in. I would love to continue this conversation or any other. I hope to see you there. That's all I got for today. This has been fun. I can't wait to circle back in 12 months and 11 months and see where we land. All right. Thanks for watching all. Rollo out.